Like today's guest, I've been working remotely long before remote work had a name. But since the pandemic, like we all know, almost everyone has had an experience working remotely. But one issue that has been recurring, that has been on everyone's mind, has been that a lot of companies, especially of recent, have been trying to get back either to a hybrid mode or fully in office because, according to them, remote work doesn't work for them. I don't agree with that. And I'm sure today's guest doesn't agree with that. And that's what we're going to talk about today on the Tech Your Business podcast, which is making remote work for your business. So today to talk about that with me is Shane Spraggs, all the way from Kelowna in Canada. We just had a chat on that. So welcome to the show, Shane.
Thanks, Peter. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So now, I just talked about businesses struggling with remote work. So why do you think these businesses struggle with remote work, and what's the first thing they need to change from your experience?
Great question. There's a lot floating around about why large businesses are going back to the office, and there's everything from conspiracy theories to some pretty good ideas. There's the concept that companies are using this as a way to lay off a bunch of people. Right? Let's shed the remote workforce and save ourselves a bunch of money. We've also heard the one where the downtown cores are suffering, so cities are putting pressure on large companies to come back to the office, and you know the stats are pretty obvious. There's probably 50% vacancy in a lot of these large cities. But what really resonates with me isn't so much that it's these external factors. When you look at what makes remote work successful, it's management. And so, as an individual, yes, you can sit at your home, and most people can work remotely successfully if they have work to do. And if you think about the role of the manager is really to make sure that person stays busy. And if you don't have a good manager, and what I say often is, we had bad managers before the pandemic. We used to know the whole, we've all familiar with that phrase, take a good employee and make them a bad manager, because we create terrible managers in business. And the reality is, you need to have good managers for remote work. And if you take a large company, say a Microsoft or Amazon or Apple, you know, or even just a smaller company that went all in on remote work during the pandemic, their choice is now to retrain all their managers or suffer the consequences of bringing people back to the office. And I believe someone has made the decision that it's costing them less overall to go back to
Yeah,
the way things work. Now, that doesn't say that remote work is bad. It's just that they are bad at remote work.
yeah, yeah, and I fully agree with that because a lot of times they try to monitor the people the way they. I think a lot of people have this mindset of if you clock in and you're sitting in front of me, you're working, and you and I know that's not true.
Yeah.
Even in my case.
Well, you just can't measure productivity based on keystrokes and bums and chairs, right? Like there's lots of people subscribe to these programs that either use your camera to make sure you're working, or counting how many mouse wiggles you do. And for every program like that, there's somebody who's got around it by having some other application on their computer that either mimics mouse wiggles or keyboard strokes. And at the end of
Yeah,
the day, that's not how you measure productivity. And what is productivity? That's the big question for a lot of companies, right? And it really comes down to, you're productive when you add value to the company. You accomplish the goals of the organization, or you move them forward in some meaningful way, either by servicing a customer or accomplishing a longer term goal or strategy. And um, and only when you're doing that. And so someone who spent 2 minutes solving a crucial bug is no less productive than someone who spent the weekend working on a large import or something. There's the amount of time you spend doing a task. It has nothing to do with the value of that task.
yeah, very true. Very true. So now I think you've talked about that biggest issue, which is management. So now for this ensuring that there is work to do, there are tasks for each of the remote employees to carry out. So what are some effective strategies you'd say for at least setting clear expectations, setting clear policies to make sure these team members are all occupied and actually adding value to the business?
Yeah, well, great question. So I'm obviously started off by dogging on the managers, but really kind of at the end of the day, the starting point for all this is the leadership team and executive side of things, where it's. I mean, this is not a difficult formula. You can get a lot of books on how this works. The enterprise operating system from Traction is a great example. They outline this in very specific detail that the goal is that a company should establish, you know, a mission and a purpose. They need to have a couple long-term goals or to hit those, build towards those that purpose or mission. They have to have yearly priorities which are going to help them move towards those goals. Those yearly priorities turn into probably quarterly department objectives. Those turn into projects. Those projects turn into tasks. And so a employee at the end of the day needs to have a task that is connected through projects and objectives and goals to the purpose of the business. Or they need to be servicing a customer, right? There's sort of two angles there. Are you in sales and you have your own metrics to accomplish? You need to get this many, cold calls done. You need to make this many, site visits, that sort of thing. Or you're in customer service, or you're in production. You're building something for a customer. Then you have purpose. You are then adding, money to the bottom line of the business. Outside of that, there's a whole contingency of people in the office or the business who are working to improve the business. In other words, do change inside the business to either make the production side or the customer side more efficient, or work on new innovations, or and so this concept of how business runs has been around for a long time. And books like Traction provide a really good outline of how to how to do it. And it's important that people not pay lip service to it anymore, right? Because what happens in the office is you can get halfway there, and you can you can you can run a reasonably successful business um, by just failing upwards in a sense, right? You get people
Yeah.
together, you have quote unquote organic conversations, and ideas happen in the moment. But what you're really doing in that situation is you're leaving things to chance, right? If you're relying on the water cooler for innovation to happen, for people to learn about communication and customer, the things going on in the business, then you're really leaving it to chance. And in a remote business, the opposite has to be true. You have to be intentional about all the things that happen in your business. Everything from how does innovation happen to an employee hear about all the important things happening inside the company, and that has to be set up in an intentional way. And the reality is, if you did that for a in-office company, you'd be more successful as well. So it's just a very straightforward, common sense approach to running a business, and making sure that you take ownership, and that you create all the systems and processes and habits that need to be created in order for your business to be successful.
Okay. So I
That's it.
think
That's all you have to do.
yeah. So I think these
Yeah.
cover the leadership, the management, and leadership team generally. So now I think you talked about something earlier in a previous answer where you talked about people who take advantage of or try to circumvent these things people try to do with, like, let's say, the mouse clickers. I've been working remotely for a long time, so I've seen a lot of things with people um who are hired to work remotely, and they decide, oh, it's a holiday, you can take any time off when you're supposed to be at work. I've
Yeah.
had issues where you hire someone and the person is obviously paying someone else to do the job they are meant to be doing. Had issues where I think there's also the overemployed trend I heard of recently, where you have a couple of remote jobs because they have a lot of time. not do it much.
Yeah,
So how would you say we handle all these things that come up directly because we are working remotely?
yeah, and again, it's a purely a management problem in that case. If you are creating a system that lets people um, not work at home or have a day off, and they're still um, accomplishing the expectations of their role, then that's your fault, right? If someone well, and also to be fair, if you have somebody who can accomplish all that work in a shorter period of time, they're really doing what they're asked to do, right? So, but as a manager, I've always what I find that it's easy to recognize when people are not meeting their expectations, both in the office and remotely. The same things happen. They don't deliver on time. When they do deliver, it's not what you expected. They're not necessarily available to chat with you when you expect they are. And the difference, what I find remotely is that there's people for whatever reason don't take as much ownership over solving that problem in an office. You might have like typical manager might walk around and catch somebody sloughing off and not being
Yeah.
productive, um, and that just doesn't happen remotely. So it does require that managers do a better job of setting expectations and following up on them. So they need to know how to delegate well, and when you delegate, it's not so simple as just saying, "Okay, you do this task by this date." That's a formula for failure. We have to involve the people in the conversation, understand what their what their skills level is, and how they perceive solving the problem or hitting the objective that you're putting in front of them, and how long they think it will take. Now, as a manager, your job is to first ask that question: how long do you think this is going to take, and when do you think you'll have this done? But then the second step is to coach them on it if they give you an answer that's maybe too lenient, or maybe even too tight. So work with them to find a date that you think challenges them, and gives them enough time to do the work, but then follow up on it, right? And if you follow up and they haven't got the work done, and that happens maybe 3 times, certainly in a row, it's kind of on you to do something about it, right? And if you've done your job well, you've got the evidence that hey, we've done this 3 times, and here's the evidence. Here's the task in Asana or Monday, or whoever you have your tasks that show you said this is where it's going to be finished and you didn't do it. And then you have a conversation, and this is where again managers these days just aren't comfortable having these conversations about performance and how to what the challenges are and how to fix them. And that's something that people need to focus on learning.
I think from your description, I can say it's actually a bit harder, or I would use the word different. It's a lot different managing in person than remotely. So I think I can understand why you say in a lot of the cases for the big companies, it's actually cheaper for them to just ask everybody to come back than training managers on new ways of relating and everything.
I was going to say that there's some very basic management skills that we just don't teach people, right? So how to delegate is a key one, and that could, I mean, it doesn't take long to learn it. It takes a lot of practice to get better at it. Asking for feedback, giving feedback, these are skills that managers need to have. They need to be able to break down complex problems into simple solutions, and they need to be able to run a one-on-one, for example. And for whatever reason, we just take these people who are good employees, we put them as managers. We don't teach them these skills. Schools don't teach these skills either, and people just and again, it's not just because they don't teach them. It's they need to be experienced in real life and reinforced. So there needs to be proper coaching and mentorship for new managers, and that's expensive. That it really is, and that to do it
Yes.
properly, you get it pays dividends once you've done it well, but it can be a bit more of an investment than a lot of companies are willing to take.
Yeah. Okay, so now I think one other thing I'd like to touch on is for most people, their case against remote work is that you don't really have that team spirit. You don't really have that camaraderie. People maybe talking by the water dispenser or something like that. And especially the extroverted ones, they say they want that feeling. They want that a kind of environment to be able to work much better. So, are there any ways to build this sort of spirit virtually?
Yeah, well, I love this question because really this is really the big one for most people. And I'll just start with some context. First of all, not everyone is the right person to work remotely, right? If you I think if you take about 10 people, two of them will say they want to work remotely full time, and then one of them will want to work full time in the office. The other ones will want some sort of hybrid work, somewhere between
Yeah,
1 to 5, 4 days in the office. And that's just the where we are as a society, and I think that's kind of changing. I look at I'm just going to use my own personal experience. I've got a 14-year-old daughter who spends a lot of time on her phone, and her friends do as well. They're growing up with technology, and they're more comfortable with with talking to people through a chat than they are picking up the phone or even talking to people in person. And so I think we're going to see as a society more people wanting that. The next thing is that as an individual, a good remote worker doesn't get their social fix from quote unquote the office, from work. They need to have something in their lives after outside work that's worth working for, and they have to get their social fix there. And I like to think of this as, instead of choosing your friends from the office, you get to choose your friends from real life, and so you have and from your community. And so those people who have clubs that they're part of, or they have activities, they belong to organizations, or they volunteer outside of the office, they tend to do a lot better remotely because they're not stuck inside their house all day, and that slowly
yeah,
becomes uh, you know uh, hinders their mental health. So building on this, I think that those two things are very important. One of the Contextually, one of the things I find differently about in-office work versus remote work is that in the office, it is very much about the culture of your group. In a hybrid work, in a remote work, the it's very much about uh, the 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 culture of the business. So we have there needs to be stronger emphasis on the purpose of the company, on why we're here, what we're trying to accomplish, and better communication within the firm to promote that idea. And in that context, people join and work with the business because they want to accomplish that purpose, rather than having a social atmosphere in a smaller team. For a in office, that smaller team might be desirable, but it's also risky because at any time someone can leave, something can happen, and it could fracture a company very quickly, and it's hard to recreate. The
yeah.
last thing I wanted to quickly share on this is that the with there's been recent studies around people who interact with each other. One's from the Wharton Neuroscience College, I think it's called, and their key finding was people who fire brains that fire together wire together, and they found that there was very little difference between people who have a connection over virtual like this versus someone who has it in the office. So there's the potential for you to build connections with people. I know this is a long-winded answer, but there is potential for you to build connections with people virtually, and companies just need to understand the techniques for that. And there's two key ones that I'll share with you. But the context behind it is that businesses want to build relatedness, not relationships. So relatedness is like that step below friendship. It's I know enough about you to feel comfortable with you and to trust you. And the way to build relatedness is to have small little social moments throughout the day. And so this could be something along the lines of an icebreaker. You start an hour-long meeting. First 5 to 10 minutes is a quick question or some sort of small activity that's fun. It's not work related, and it gets you, it builds some understanding of the other people. So I might ask a question, for example, tell me a smell about that reminds you of your childhood, right? You tell me your smell and I'll tell you mine, and suddenly we have something in common, right? I can appreciate that memory you have, um, and it brings you down to about more of a human level, right? Because we all have those sorts of experiences. The next is to ensure that you teach facilitation skills at your office, and all meetings need to be facilitated. I see it time and time again that people who run meetings don't know how to run meetings, and they don't do a good job of involving everybody in the meeting. They don't do a good job of keeping people on track, and oftentimes the people you want feedback from are the quiet introvert ones, and you need to know how to get them. So again, lots of stuff there, but generally a company should have facilitation skills high on their list of things to train their staff. They need to do regular, um, moments during the day where they do have small social connections. And I can give you a whole list of these. We have them on my website. I can send it to people. And there's also the ability to do team building events, which I can send you a list of those as well, which they're all, and at the end of the day, it all does exactly the same thing that being in the office does, but it's more build stronger bonds.
Amazing. So I think I'm just saying all the things, all the reasons why businesses don't want to go remote. So the next one is security. For a lot of businesses, they know when you're within the office, you have maybe computers or devices issued by your company to your
Yeah,
employees. Everybody's on your internet network. There's no external connection or anything. But when you go remote, you might have people working off their own laptops or mobile devices. You have them working on their home internet connections and things like that. So, what security challenges have you seen by faced by businesses going remote?
yeah. First, I think you have just the same number of security challenges in the office as you do working from home. I mean, if you issue a company laptop to somebody at the office, they can take it home with them, right? And try as you might, there are a million different ways to get information off that laptop and stored somewhere. It's impossible to lock down completely the information you have in your company, and so it really does at the end of the day come to the other side of things, which is good training and making sure that you regularly test. You do that fake phishing email, and you catch
Yeah.
people. So the security is a broader thing than just technology. You need to be able to deal with the human side of things and make sure that people understand, not to use the same password everywhere they go, and you have some sort of password sharing thing. The next I would say is that unless you're contracting with people, unless you're hiring someone on contract, um, you really should invest in sending people a company laptop. Uh, they're your employee. I think it's inexcusable for you to expect them to spend their own money on their own
Yeah.
equipment to do the job that you're hiring them to do. If it's a full-time job, if you're employed, and really at the end of the day, that is also a quality thing. You want to make sure that the laptop or the computer they're working off of has the juice that they need in order to do the work you want them to do. Because let's be honest, there's some laptops that if they are spending more time, fixing, Windows upgrade happens and suddenly everything breaks. That's wasted productivity, and they're going to charge you for it, right? It's going to come back to you. So send out a laptop that's uniform. You guys are all everyone's using the same thing. It reduces the tech support, and make sure that they are getting the information they need. If you're doing things with contractors, we've always said this. This is the thing. We've always had this problem. Deal with contractors the same way you used to before the pandemic. How was that? Well, you give them, they have their own equipment, and you control which accounts they have access to.
Hmm.
Simple as that, right? And fortunately, these days, there's a lot better technology around the security side than there is now, and it used to be so single sign-on, that sort of thing. So I don't buy the argument that it's less secure. It's certainly you can be more lazy about it. So
Yeah.
it's just about treating it with seriously, making sure you do all the things you need to do to keep your information and company safe.
Amazing. So now for the Let's talk a bit about the tech used in remote working. So, do you have any recommendations for any tools, apps, software, or maybe any of those that you've seen that can drive productivity or make remote
Yeah.
work more seamless?
Well, I won't shatter any or surprise anybody with some sort of tool that secret tool that you should be using. But I will say the one it's less about the tool you use. It's more about making sure it's uniform, standardization, making sure you don't have you don't have multiple different approaches to the same thing. And you don't let teams choose for themselves. Be intentional
Mm,
around the software you choose. There's limited choices right now for the top line chat tools. It's Slack or MS, Microsoft Teams. Those two control about 90% of the market. WebEx is still trying to be part of it, but you need a tool of some kind to do that back and forth conversation. I like the fact that your chat tool should be able to handle voice memos and video memos. So I'm a big proponent of those. You record a minute long video and send that out instead of have a meeting. That to me is a really good practice. At the end of the day, it comes down to standardization and making sure everyone has the same tools and understands how to use them. What we see right now, with certainly with digital communication, is that every tool has something in it. Like you can get, let's say you have Monday at your office or Asana. Throughout that tool, you can leave comments and you can have conversations and share files. Well, if you also share files and have conversations somewhere else, that's a problem because now you have this.
yeah.
Okay, where'd you upload that? Well, I was in that project. Well, which project? Okay, and it's just not clear to people where things are, and that's where the problems happen. Is because you start losing little bits of productivity because people are either trying to figure out where to put something or where they put something, right? And so spending some time to clarify how you communicate at the office or remotely is vital, and
Yeah.
choosing tools that everyone else is going to use as well.
Okay. So now, for I think you mentioned something earlier that not everyone is suited to working remotely. So, what's your advice for hiring the right people for remote positions?
Excellent. Yeah. So I touched on it before, but you want to find somebody who has a life outside the office. I think one of the key things that we learned as a society during the pandemic was a greater appreciation for work-life balance and wellness, mental wellness. That people, coming out of their 60-hour a week job, going, "Why am I doing this?" I got a life outside the office, and I need to spend some time on it. So that's the first thing: is do they have some sort of activities outside of work that they are working for? More Most commonly, if they have that thing to look forward to, they're going to get their work done during the day and time. I also like to, some very basic stuff. I like to inspect if you can and have a video conversation with your new hire. Inspect where they're working. If they are
Hmm.
calling in from a studio apartment with three other house guests, that's not something you can change. Or if they're calling in from the library because they don't have a place to work, that's a red flag. And despite how good they might be as an employee, you have to recognize that you can't change that environment for them. And so they need to be able to have a good place to work, a basement or a house, a room in the house, or at least some room that's been a quiet place.
Yeah.
I'm also curious. I'm also looking at age as well. So there are a lot of things to learn at the office. And so I suggest that anyone straight out of school should go work at an office for probably 5 years. There's a lot of things around how you work with others, customs, just basic standards that you would imagine, like don't or show up on time, that sort of thing. How to conduct yourself during a meeting, which are just frankly easier to learn at the office. And right now, the majority of people who are working remote are somewhere between the 35 to 45 age. Uh,
Yeah.
that's not saying you can't have someone who's out of school, but they're going to need more support, and you'll have to probably give them a mentor or a coach. and there'll have to be some pretty heavy conversations around, you know, hey, you did this wrong. It'll be a fundamental thing that's not necessarily related to the role, but this is not how you act at the office, and those those things are harder to teach remotely. A
Yeah.
couple other things would be, this day and age, there's a lot of tests you can do to make sure people have some basic knowledge, but a lot of the work is communicating. So how do they communicate with each other through text? I encourage people to do perform an interview over chat, right? Have them join a Slack channel and just do a conversation with them over chat. How quickly do they reply? How intelligent are their replies, or intelligible are their replies? Do you get what they're saying? Are they spewing out massive chunks of text that don't make any sense or are meandering? Because that's again something that's harder to change once they're on, have joined the office. And
Yeah.
so there's just some fundamentals that you want to make sure that you look for when you hire somebody remotely.
Amazing. I think I got a couple of very good nuggets from that, and a couple of mistakes I've seen I've been making too. Yeah. So you wrote a book on this topic, the power of remote. So can you tell us a bit about the book, what to expect from it, and how to
Yeah.
get it?
Well, here's my prop. This is the book here. So yeah, so will come as no surprise to your listeners that this was something that we wrote during the pandemic after the remote work
Mm,
started becoming very popular. The Vertier, the company I was working with at the time, had been working remotely since 2007. So there's lots of inherent experience in there. And myself and Cynthia Watson, Cynthia is the owner of Vertier. We got together to write this book. She brought her experience, working with distributed teams and running distributed projects. I brought my experience as a business leader and leading teams, and we really tackled three main challenges, three main areas. So when the pandemic hit, um, I like to say that the employees were ready. Most of the people were ready to go home and work from their house because they already had the skills and tools available to
yeah.
them. But there were three groups of people who weren't, and that was, like I mentioned, the managers. They weren't ready to work from home and do their job well from home. HR was also not ready to work from home and do their job well from home, and similarly the executive team. So the book really focuses on those three areas, providing people recommendations on how to improve your management, how to hire and fire people remotely, how to motivate them, and then how to run it, how to manage your strategy remotely, how to make sure people are following your lead, and understand your values as a company, and all around just being more successful as a business working remotely.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So I think for listeners who have listened to this, who have learned a couple of things like I have about doing the right things when hiring and working remotely, especially around management, policies, and leadership, like you've talked about. If they would like to continue this conversation, they would like to connect with you, or they would like to maybe get your book or anything, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Absolutely. So for starters, my name is unique in LinkedIn. I'm very lucky. Growing up, I didn't think I was that lucky with my last name, and but if you go look for Shane Spraggs in LinkedIn, you'll find me. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to add you to my network, and I do share some tips and tricks every once now and again. The book is available on Amazon through Forbes, and so it's available for purchase. I'm very proud of the how well it's performed. Yet to receive a 1, 2, or 3 star review,
Mm,
and lots of good feedback on it. And so we're happy with how well it's been received, and I think you'll probably enjoy it as well. If you're not a book person, it's also available audio on Audible and on Spotify. If you have a Spotify premium membership, you can listen to it for free, pretty much,
mm.
through the audiobooks there. So yeah, connect with me online and on LinkedIn, and feel free to ask questions.
Amazing. So Shane Spraggs on LinkedIn, and you can listen to the book on Spotify, wherever. So your links, whatever, will be put on the screen for those watching and in the show notes for anyone who's listening. So thank you so much, Shane, for coming on the Techie Business Podcast today.
Thanks so much, Peter. It's been a pleasure.
And for the listeners, till next week when we are back with a brand new episode, keep taking your business and try out some of the tips you've learned today. Bye for now.